Before he became a legend, he was a scholar. Thomas Edward Lawrence was not born in the desert. He was born in 1888 in Wales, raised in England, educated at Oxford. He studied history, specifically the Crusades. He walked battlefields, measured castle walls, learned languages, but books were not enough. Lawrence traveled to the Middle East before the war. He learned Arabic. He studied tribal politics. He blended in, not as a conqueror, but as an observer. Then came 1914. World War I. The Ottoman Empire joined the Central Powers. Britain needed leverage in the region, and Lawrence, young, intelligent, fluent in Arabic, suddenly became useful. He was sent as a liaison officer. Officially, he was there to assist Arab forces rebelling against Ottoman rule. Unofficially, he was there to serve British interests. But something unexpected happened. Lawrence did not remain emotionally distant. He admired Arab culture. He adopted local dress. He lived among tribal fighters. He rode across the desert for days. To some, he was an ally. To others, a foreign manipulator. He helped coordinate guerrilla attacks. He advised on strategy. He supported the capture of Aqaba, a turning point in the Arab Revolt. And slowly, the British press began shaping a myth, Lawrence of Arabia. But reality was more complicated. Behind the flowing robes and desert victories, there was a man torn between loyalty and doubt. Because while he fought alongside Arab leaders like Faisal, secret agreements were already being drafted in Europe, agreements dividing the Middle East. And Lawrence knew. He later wrote, "I risked the fraud on my conviction that Arab help was necessary to our cheap and speedy victory." He believed in Arab independence, but he also served an empire. Was he a liberator, a strategist, an idealist trapped inside imperial politics, or something else entirely? The desert made him famous. History made him controversial, and his own writings would reveal a man deeply conflicted. War creates strange alliances. By 1916, the Arab Revolt had begun. Arab forces, led by Sharif Hussein of Mecca and his son Faisal, rose against Ottoman rule. Britain encouraged it. They promised support. They hinted at independence. They spoke of a future Arab state. Lawrence became the bridge between worlds. He rode across the Hejaz railway lines, organized sabotage missions, helped plan irregular desert warfare. His strategy was simple but effective. Don't fight the Ottoman army head-on. Destroy supply lines, attack mobility, make the desert the weapon, and it worked. The fall of Aqaba in 1917 shocked Ottoman defenses. It was a bold maneuver, attacking from the landward side, where defenses were weakest. Lawrence was no longer just an advisor. He was becoming a symbol. But while he rode across the desert, diplomats in Europe were drawing lines on paper. In 1916, Britain and France signed the secret Sykes-Picot agreement. It divided much of the Ottoman Arab territories into spheres of influence. No unified Arab state, no full independence. Instead, zones of control. When news of the agreement became public after the Russian Revolution, the political landscape shifted. Lawrence had known hints of it, and it disturbed him. He believed the Arabs deserved self-determination, but he also understood he was serving British military goals. The contradiction deepened. In 1918, Damascus fell to Allied and Arab forces. For a moment, it seemed the promises might hold. Faisal entered the city as a leader of a new Arab administration. Lawrence stood beside him. But empires do not disappear because of battlefield victories. At the post-war negotiations in Paris, decisions were not made in Damascus. They were made in European conference rooms. Mandates replaced independence. France moved into Syria. Britain took control of Iraq and Palestine. The map of the modern Middle East began to take shape. Lawrence watched the outcome with visible frustration. He had helped win a war, but the peace felt different. The man who wore Arab robes now returned to Britain. Famous, celebrated, but internally conflicted. He had lived like a Muslim among Muslim tribes, shared hardship, shared risk, yet he was never fully one of them, and perhaps never fully comfortable in Britain again either. The legend was growing, but so was the weight of what had happened. When the war ended, the legend began. The British press transformed Thomas Edward Lawrence into something larger than life, an English officer in flowing Arab robes, a desert strategist, a romantic revolutionary. In 1922, American journalist Lowell Thomas toured the world with dramatic lectures and photographs of Lawrence. Music, lighting, epic narration. Lawrence of Arabia, the name stuck, but Lawrence himself was uncomfortable. He disliked the exaggeration. He believed the Arab fighters deserved far more credit. He felt the myth distorted reality. Fame became a burden. He refused medals, avoided publicity, rejected a knighthood. Instead of embracing status, he did something unexpected. He disappeared. Lawrence enlisted in the Royal Air Force under a false name, not as an officer, as an ordinary airman. Later, he joined the Royal Tank Corps, again under an alias. Why would a globally famous war hero choose anonymity? Some believed he sought punishment, others believed he sought peace. Perhaps he simply wanted control over his own narrative. During this period, he wrote his monumental memoir, 7 Pillars of Wisdom. It was not a simple war diary. It was reflective, poetic, sometimes self-critical. In it, Lawrence did not portray himself as triumphant. He wrote of guilt, of divided loyalty, of moral uncertainty. He questioned whether the Arab Revolt had truly achieved what was promised. He admitted he had been aware of political realities beyond the battlefield. The heroic image did not fully match the internal voice. By the 1930s, the world had changed. The Middle East was under mandates. European influence remained strong. The post-war settlement shaped borders that still define the region today. Lawrence remained distant from politics. He avoided interviews, lived quietly, focused on military technical work and writing. Then, in 1935, at age 46, he died in a motorcycle accident in England. Sudden, unexpected, the legend froze in time. Years later, Hollywood revived it with the film Lawrence of Arabia. Sweeping music, endless desert horizons, a heroic narrative. But like all legends, the real man was more complex. He lived between identities: British officer, Arab ally, imperial servant, cultural admirer. Was he a liberator, a romantic idealist, an imperial agent? Perhaps he was all of these, and none entirely. History rarely offers simple categories, and Lawrence remains one of its most debated figures. When Thomas Edward Lawrence died in 1935, the Middle East he had fought in no longer existed in the same form. The Ottoman Empire was gone. In its place stood new political entities: Iraq, Transjordan, Syria, Palestine, shaped not only by local leaders, but by European mandates. Lawrence had hoped for a unified Arab independence. What emerged instead was a compromise between wartime promises and imperial interests. He was not the architect of the post-war map, but he had helped create the conditions under which it was drawn. That distinction matters. The political reality at the 1919 Paris Peace Conference: Arab aspirations were presented. Faisal argued for independence, but strategic priorities dominated negotiations. France secured Syria, Britain secured Iraq and Palestine. The mandate system replaced Ottoman rule with European supervision. To some historians, Lawrence represents the moral tension of that transition, an imperial officer who sympathized with anti-imperial aspirations, a bridge, but not a sovereign decision-maker. The psychological legacy Lawrence remains fascinating, not only because of geopolitics, but because of identity. He immersed himself in Arab culture, wore local dress, spoke fluent Arabic, shared danger in the desert. Some describe him as deeply respectful. Others argue he could never fully escape the framework of empire he served. Was he living like a Muslim? In lifestyle during the revolt, yes. In faith and political belonging, far more complex. He adopted cultural forms, but he never abandoned his British allegiance. That duality defines him. The myth versus the man. The 1962 epic Lawrence of Arabia immortalized him as a cinematic hero, but the real Lawrence was quieter, more conflicted, In 7 Pillars of Wisdom, he did not write as a conqueror. He wrote as a man unsure whether the victory was morally clean. Few historical figures leave behind both a geopolitical impact and a psychological puzzle. Lawrence did. Final reflection: he was not fully British in spirit, not fully Arab in belonging, not purely idealist, not purely strategist. He stood in between, and perhaps that is why he endures. Because the modern Middle East, like Lawrence himself, was born in ambiguity. End of series.